a city that pulsates with energy. A city that is constantly growing, higher, faster, and more compact. Its 7.5 million Hong Kongers walk under 9,000 high-rises towering above them. But underneath the glass and steel skyline is a dynamic cultural landscape where its Eastern Chinese roots meet its Western colonial connections.
Culture is a transformative project in any case. The most important part is to be able to bring the stories that are embedded in this community here, in our region, to the world through our voice.
In the late 90s, an idea to develop the world's largest cultural center in Hong Kong began to take shape, the West Kowloon Cultural District.
This project is absolutely mind-bogglingly exciting.
The project contains a range of cultural facilities, museums, galleries, theaters, studios, and 23 hectares of open space.
We want to let people enjoy art and culture in a natural environment, with a family, with your friends.
In a city that has a lot of light, a lot of moving image that is commercially driven, we will be adding the artistic voice.
So let's take a look at the buildings that make up the district.
That is M+, that is our museum.
The centerpiece of the West Kowloon Cultural District is M+.
Museums are a very important part of the civic fabric of a city, and they add a dimension that is really essential to the heartbeat of the city.
Sahanya Rafael is the museum director for M+, and since 2016 has watched the museum grow into the building it is today.
Starting to feel very finished. You know, I used to go in when it was just a basement being prepared, right through now to completion.
The M+ building will be completed in 2020 and will open in the next 9 to 12 months. When completed, it will be one of the largest museums of modern and contemporary visual culture in the world.
M+ is a global museum of visual culture. And what do I mean by visual culture? I mean design, architecture, moving image, visual art.
Stretching across 65,000 square meters, M+ will be of the same scale as the Tate Modern in London or New York's Museum of Modern Art.
What we do is put M+ on the international space, bringing our Hong Kong artists, designers, architects as equivalent and equal to their international colleagues.
Another building in the district that hopes to transform the way we understand and experience art is the Hong Kong Palace Museum. The museum is a collaboration between the iconic Palace Museum in Beijing and the West Kowloon Cultural District.
The building behind me is the Hong Kong Palace Museum building under construction.
As the museum director, Dr. Louis Ng is tasked with selecting some of China's most treasured artifacts from the Beijing's Palace Museum.
The Palace Museum collections are mainly made up of the imperial collections of the Ming and Qing dynasty. They are all China's national treasures. These kind of items now in the Palace Museum, they have 1.8 million. They can only display regularly less than 1%.
800 pieces of the collection will make it into the space in Hong Kong.
We are not only display them, but I think we want to find new ways to interpret, to present it to our audiences.
One of the tasks Louis and his team face is how to present ancient Chinese art to modern audiences.
Traditionally, we learn history, in a class, from textbook, from pictures. Sometimes it's not interesting. Now we provide a very unique opportunity to let the people see the real objects in encountering these art objects, which was made maybe 1,000 or 2,000 years ago.
But it's not just Louis and his team who are bringing ancient art to new audiences.
Arts don't stay stagnant. Art's supposed to change according to times, otherwise you become irrelevant.
As West Kowloon's head of performing arts, Paul Tam is tasked with transforming Hong Kong's performing arts sector.
So as 21st century performing artists, we need to bring ourselves to you. So we want to actually help you to understand us. We cannot just kind of hold ourselves in a pedestal and think that you're going to come to us. And so I think this is like the challenge of 21st century performing arts folks like ourselves.
A key component of his mission, the Xiqu Centre.
Having Xiqu Centre as the first piece of architecture for the whole district, I think that's quite symbolic. It speaks of the heritage of Hong Kong. We're part of the Chinese arts and culture. And so this is I think a kind of a statement to the Hong Kong people and to the rest of the world. We want to honor our own heritage.
Xiqu is one of the most ancient forms of theatrical drama in the world. And now, centuries later, there are over 300 subgenres of Xiqu performances.
Normally, a traditional Chinese opera lasts over 3 hours, many characters and whatnot, elaborate sets and costumes. That would be really daunting for a first-timer. The whole point about the Xiqu Centre is that we actually get to congregate excerpts from popular traditional Xiqu productions into 1.5 hours of beautiful excerpts. And so what we want to do is to have that as introduction to people who may not actually understand what Xiqu is, but they want to find out. We want to pique people's curiosity.
Xiqu focuses on a traditional art form, but on the opposite side of the district, that's where contemporary performing arts comes alive.
So on this beautiful ground stands Freespace, the second piece of performing arts architecture for West Kowloon Cultural District. Freespace is really interesting. This is the first specifically purpose-built theater for contemporary art, performing art forms. A lot of times, I think a place like this, a performing arts center in any big city, it's not just a city's pride or national pride. It's also the people's pride, because this is where people can congregate and have fun, and you can always come here. And this is I think what West Kowloon Cultural District really pines for, is to be something for everyone.
As the district takes shape, it's also making a mark on the skyline of Hong Kong.
The whole of West Kowloon had a master plan designed by Norman Foster, and within that footprint were different cultural institutions. Each of these institutions have different architects. It's a fantastic part of the cultural expression of the district.
This is the Grand Theatre, the crown jewel of the Xiqu Centre. We take this Chinese philosophy, the Qi. It's all about no angles. And so you can see this beautiful wave-like movements within the theater. It's beautiful.
Much like the masterpieces inside the district, some of the buildings themselves reflect their own unique heritage.
So the architect draw reference from the layout of the Forbidden City. The design concept of Palace Museum is a fresh interpretation of Chinese visual culture. The museum building itself will be a cultural landmark in Hong Kong.
But perhaps the building that steals the show? M+. The museum will have a 65-meter-high LED screen, an art piece in its own right.
It's actually a lenticular system. The angles for the LED offer the opportunity for those sitting on the podium who are looking straight up at it to be able to recognize and distinguish the images, as well as those on the island far away.
Like most cities, Hong Kong's landscape is constantly evolving from every perspective. But the West Kowloon Cultural District is a significant turning point in the city's transformation.
I want the city of Hong Kong, the people who are living in Hong Kong, people who visit Hong Kong, to always make M+ the must-see, must-visit part of their lived experience.
We really want to let people understanding about Hong Kong culture, our perspective, our visions.
The wonderful thing about West Kowloon Cultural District is we have the wide expanse of space, and it's almost like a blank sheet of paper. And so we can just kind of reshape the arts development in Hong Kong. And so previously never available to the people of Hong Kong. So this is a really exciting project.